Keep Right with Ralph K. Ginorio. Amending Federal Elections, a Christmas wish. At my age, I don't usually dwell on wishing for much. However, this year of 2024, I do have a Christmas wish. Like most real gifts, this is something that we adults can give to ourselves. I want clean elections, whose processes and results we can trust. Here is my wish list for achieving this. In short, federal elections should be restructured to minimize opportunities for fraud. Also, it would be best if newly elected office holders assumed their responsibilities as close to their election date as possible. Constitutional amendment. Many among the 50 states have failed in their constitutional responsibilities to manage free and fair elections. In them, myriad interests profit from the corruptibility fostered under current conditions. These interests can be counted on to retard genuine reform. A new amendment to the United States Constitution focused on restructuring all elections for federal office could successfully combat such corruption. Now, as a conservative, it does go against my grain to entrust the federal government with any increased power. However, the rank skullduggery that typifies elections in so many deep blue states, and maybe a few red ones too, render their election tallies illegitimate. In these enclaves, they have achieved a level of control which ensures that no close election is ever lost by the party machine candidate, usually a Democrat. Such fundamental uncertainty about the security and validity of election results is caustic to the health of our body politic. We can stop this through a new constitutional amendment. Voter identification. Poor election integrity stymies the ability of citizens to express their will through their votes. In our republic, all legitimacy comes from the consent of the governed. Electoral corruption undermines the expression of the popular will that constitutes the consent of the governed. As such, absolutely every voter must be expected to produce a valid identification that includes a photograph and other descriptive information, possibly even a fingerprint. Both the identification card and the election system should be designed to be compared with the prospective voter to confirm that he or she is who they purport to be. Because so many states have compromised the security of their driver's licensing process, state driver's licenses really are no longer fit for this purpose of acting as a valid voter identification. Instead, a more stringent identification process, something akin to involving a U.S. passport, would better ensure that the franchise is restricted exclusively to those citizens who are legally entitled to vote. Election week. Elections for federal office should be conducted throughout the week prior to 8 o'clock p.m. local time of the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November. In each of these 7 days, polling places could ideally be open from 8 a.m. through 8 p.m. local time. All voting, except for those whose confirmed circumstances qualify them to cast an absentee ballot, all voting should be conducted during this election week. Overseas, absentee and military voting should be conducted between 1 and 2 weeks prior to the stateside election week. In other words, an absentee election week prior to the in-person election week, so that these ballots can be counted in time to be part of the regular tally. Such a system provides a fair opportunity for every registered voter to exercise their franchise in a timely manner, conducive to the efficient counting of every valid vote. Paper ballots. No form of paperless machine voting should be permitted. Voting should be conducted exclusively in written form with permanent ink on some form of secured and difficult to counterfeit paper ballot. All ballots should be secured both before, during, and after the election by law enforcement personnel. and not those who have substantial interests in the outcome. While machines may be trusted to count these paper ballots under human supervision, all contested ballots should be reviewed and counted by human beings. At least 3 individuals count every contested ballot, with one counter, one to confirm the count, and one observer. A device should record this process ballot by ballot to form a record to be utilized when addressing election integrity. One reason for employing a whole week for in-person voting while having all other forms of voting in advance of this local voting is to afford election officials time to count and, with law enforcement personnel, secure these paper ballots. Announcing results. Protracted uncertainty caused by seemingly endless recounts and a long transition period served no one's interests except for the corrupt. The long transition may have made sense when we were still using horse and buggy. There's no reason to do this anymore. Election results should be announced no later than 48 hours after the polls close. Ideally, this would be before the Thursday evening immediately following the election. Taking office. On the very next day, ideally Friday after the election, the office would change hands from the old office holder to the new. The British have used a variant on this system, actually on the same day, for centuries, and it works. This permits the newly elected official to assume responsibility for their office without the current set of months where lame duck officials always make mischief. One only has to look at the dangerous and corrupt policies of the post-2024 Biden-Harris administration to see the absolute need to eliminate this interregnum. Term limits. No federal elected office holder should be retained in the same office for more than 12 years. This means, arguably, that the amendment dealing with presidential term limits should be altered or replaced to expand the option to have 3 4-year terms. Senators could serve for 2 6-year terms, and congressmen for 6 2-year terms. Further, a 20-year cap on total years in any federal elected office should be added to account for those people who are elected to serve in a variety of roles. We do not need professional politicians there for a lifetime. That's a judge, not a senator or a congressman or a president. One person, one vote. The ideal, of one person, one vote must be upheld. No scheme involving ranked choice voting should be permitted that would dilute the grave responsibility that a citizen has when exercising his or her franchise. Conclusion. Certainly, my above recommendations would require that significantly increased human and material resources be directed to elections. New federal officials would need to coordinate with those who currently manage all elections at the state and local level. However, unlike much post-progressive era federal intervention, this set of reforms is actually within the proper purview of the federal government, ensuring that their elections are free and fair and valid and resistant to corruption. Now, this is my short list of matters that I would address while federalizing federal elections. No doubt, much of this will seem both amateurish and full of flawed conceptions to many in the audience. I'm a professional teacher by vocation. I am not a constitutional scholar, nor am I a politician. Fair enough. I would welcome those with superior legal and political experience to offer his or her own recommendations to address the systemic weaknesses in our federal elections. If we wish to truly seek the consent of the governed and use that as the basis for all legitimacy in our American federal republic, we must reassert control, we American citizens, over our federal elections and restore electoral processes that are worthy of our trust.